The life of a hermit crab isn't so bad. They lived near the seashore and they bathed in the warm sun. They bathed in the salty sea and they play in the soft. The views are great too. Sunrise and sunset can be pretty, spectacular, and you can't beat the night sky with all its twinkling stars. But for one hermit crab, life was not so great. You see, Crab was a hermit crab of specialized proportions. You might think that being the biggest crab on the seashore has its accidents. However, for crab, their accidents were few and far between. One of the biggest problems with being big was just that being big. Being big Being big made it easy for hungry crows to spot kept as they hung like kites in the strip sea breeze. But there was a bigger problem. Cat could not find a home that was big enough for him. Hermit crab lived in the discarded shells of snow. As crab grows, it moves out of the shelf and into a bigger one. The trouble that is small snails are not so big. Now, that is not a huge problem to most normal-sized crab, but crab it was a problem with enormity. Cat walked sideways up and down the shore. He reached and searched for a shelf big enough to use as his home. He waited and waited, hoping that soon one day a large shelf would wash up on shore. While he waited to find a proper home, Cap lived in a large hole in a rock. Now, the hole was a fine home for most animals, but it was not a proper home for a hermit crab. Whenever Cap wanted to go out, he felt nagged. The other hermit crab made fun of him, and the goose snooped down to try to make him their dinner. Cat always managed to escape the goose, but the teasing from the other crab had to the core of his feeling. To hide his nest, Cat tried everything. First, he gathered feathers he found along the shore and strung them together with old fishing line. Then he wrapped them around his sharp self. But the other crabs thought he looked silly. Looked at Crab now, they said. He thinks he's a bird. The next thing you know, he will try to fly. Crab's feelings were hurt even more. He threw off the feathers and returned to his hole in the rock. Next, he gathered seaweed and moved it together to make a fine look shirt. But soon the seaweed began to rot and smell. The smell was so bad that not even Crab could stand it. So he threw away his seaweed suit and returned to his old hole in the rock. Peeping out of his hole one morning, Cat noticed something strange had washed ashore. He crawled out of the hole to take a closer look. As he got closer, he could see it was a boot, and a very fine boot it was. The boot was bright blue, which was Crab's favorite color in the world. He had always admired the blue starfish in the tide pools, and he thought that blue crabs were the most handsome of all crabs. He had looked for a blue shell for a home when he was a smaller crab, but he had never found one. Crab examined the boat more closely. It was made of rubber and could be perfect for stormy days when the cold wind were too large ice. Aha, thought Crab. The ice will surely scared off their sleeping goose. And best of all, the boat was large. Cat took inside and sized it up. The boat was almost infinitely big enough for Crab to size it up. The boat was most definitely big enough for Crab's enormous body. He crawled into the boat. It was a perfect fit. Crab started down the shore wearing his new home. The goose were frightened by the two large eyes looking up at them, and all the other crabs ooh and ah as Crab walked by. They were envious of Crab's beautiful new home. Crab was not the only big crab on the shore. He was almost handsome. Most handsome. The next week, Cap had an open house. All the other crabs came to see Crab's home, and they bought him gifts. Crab was no longer the laughing stock of all the crabs. He was the envy of the seashore. This is the end of the story. Goodbye.